In 1914, precision fire paralyzed million-man armies in the trenches of Europe. But in the 18th century, a lone shooter faced immediate execution. Targeting a specific officer violated the absolute ethics of smoothbore combat. Why did commanders consider a deliberate shot a dishonor? The battlefield operated on rigid social rules. The answer lay in the physics of the smoothbore barrel. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, armies fought with smoothbore muskets. The barrel lacked internal rifling. The spherical lead ball bounced against the iron walls before exiting. At 80 yards, the projectile trajectory deviated by several feet. Hitting a single human target was physically impossible. This ballistic limitation created a strict combat culture. Armies did not hide. The concept of a specialized marksman developed in isolation. The terminology originated from British military slang in colonial India. Officers hunted a small, highly erratic bird, the snipe. Hitting it required precise calculations. The slang stuck. A sniper defined a specialist capable of eliminating difficult targets at extreme distances. But regular European armies rejected this practice. Systematic stealth killing broke the established military contract. To compensate for the severe ballistic inaccuracy of the musket, tacticians relied entirely on massed firepower. Regiments marched forward across open fields. Infantrymen formed into dense linear ranks and leveled their weapons for a synchronized volley. The synchronized formations of the American Revolutionary War fractured with a single mechanical upgrade. Barrels with spiral grooves entered the combat zone. The internal grooves forced the lead projectile to spin. Spin stabilized the flight path. Accuracy multiplied. But mass production did not exist. Gunsmiths forged these barrels by hand. Each rifle was a high-cost, custom-built instrument. The mechanics changed the targeting protocol. Massed muskets relied on volume. The rifled barrel relied on selection. Shooters bypassed the standard infantrymen. They aimed directly at the command structure. Officers fell first. The unwritten social contract of battlefield etiquette collapsed. The primary payload of the new weapon was psychological. Troops rested in secured rear perimeters. Then a man dropped dead in the dirt. A single sharp crack severed the camp's silence. The threat of an invisible shooter generated permanent paranoia. One precise bullet inflicted more mental damage on a regiment than sustained artillery fire. Line infantrymen classified selective targeting as premeditated murder. Interrogations did not happen. Patrols executed captured riflemen on the spot. Field executions could not halt the tactical shift. The psychological terror of lone wolves mutated into a systemic war machine during the American Civil War, driven by the Minie ball. How did a .451 caliber bullet decapitate the Union command? Hexagonal bore rifling provided unprecedented ballistics. May 1864, the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. General John Sedgwick inspected the Union artillery lines. Subordinates warned him about incoming sniper fire. The general dismissed the threat. He stated they could not hit an elephant at this distance. A fraction of a second later, a bullet tore through his skull just under his left eye. Sedgwick collapsed dead. The trajectory originated from 800 yards away. The shooter operated a specialized British Whitworth rifle. Brass mounts secured the telescopic sight to the heavy steel barrel. The marksman turned the elevation dial. A sharp metallic click locked the optic into position. The barrel utilized hexagonal bore rifling. This twisted polygonal geometry gripped the projectile tightly, perfectly sealing the expanding powder gases. Hexagonal rifling allowed the Whitworth to strike targets at 1,000 yards. At this extreme distance, a human figure appears smaller than the front side of the rifle. Standard infantry parameters fractured. Regular troops firing the Minie ball hit a hard limit at an effective range of 300 yards. Precision optics bypassed these physical limits entirely. Confederate command analyzed the ballistic data. They completely reorganized their front lines. Generals pulled the most accurate marksmen from standard infantry regiments. They consolidated these shooters into dedicated sharpshooter battalions. This institutionalized the practice. Elite independent corps emerged. Commanders granted them absolute tactical autonomy. They roamed the battlefield freely. They hunted specific high-value targets. Artillery crews died mid-reload. Couriers dropped off their horses. Officers fell inside their command tents. A single marksman paralyzed entire brigades. The new effective firing range reached 1,000 yards. Powerful bolt-action rifles and smokeless powder drove European armies into trenches. Snipers had to invent unprecedented methods of camouflage. The First World War stalled in the dirt. Frontal assaults failed. The effective range hit 1,000 yards. Full metal jacket bullets punched through standard cover. Above-ground movement ceased. What turned a morning infantry shave into a fatal error? Hunting optics on German rifles. The German command deployed a new specialized asset. They recruited civilian hunters. They pulled marksmen straight from local shooting clubs. These men understood ballistics and absolute patience. They brought the most modern optics in the world to the front line. Carl Zeiss glass mounted on Gewehr 98 rifles. Perfect mechanical clarity. The technological shift sealed the trap. The transition to smokeless powder meant the sniper no longer produced a telltale white cloud after firing a shot. The visual signature vanished completely. Pinpointing the shooter became a mathematical impossibility. Flawless rifle engineering locked millions of soldiers underground. The trench became a subterranean prison. Daily life devolved into a lethal lottery. A soldier reached out with his tin canteen from the dirty trench. He just needed a quick scoop of water. The black crosshairs of a modern German optic locked onto the target. The sharp crack of a full metal jacket bullet broke the sound barrier over the wet mud. The morning routine ended instantly. The canteen dropped. The cat and mouse began. The transition from the open firefights of the American Civil War birthed a positional hell. Troops entrenched behind sandbags. They did not yet realize that marksmen would soon coldly maim them to collapse medical logistics. How did a projectile reach a soldier fully hidden behind a parapet? Snipers mastered the mechanics of the downward ricochet. The geometry of death changed. A high-velocity round struck the hardened edge of a reinforced sandbag. The impact altered the kinetic vector. A sharp, heavy crack echoed as the deformed bullet deflected straight down into the trench. It shattered the spine of a man crouching in the mud. Ballistics destroyed all illusions of cover. Infantrymen stopped walking upright. A paranoid subterranean society formed under the constant threat of optics. The trench arms race accelerated. German shooters fortified their loopholes with thick steel shields. They equipped themselves with double-layered helmets. Standard rounds simply sparked against this multi-layered armor. The British countered with extreme kinetic mass. They transported massive elephant rifles from the colonies to the front lines. Heavy hunting calibers smashed against German headgear. The sheer impact force snapped necks even when the steel plates held. This mechanical threat paralyzed whole battalions. One concealed optic controlled the grid. The daily baseline stood at 10 killed soldiers per sector, 300 bodies a month, all from isolated, calculated shots. Standard infantry weapons failed to neutralize these fortified positions. The only technical method to suppress a hidden sniper was a heavy artillery barrage leveling the entire suspected grid square. The daily quota of 10 kills forced engineers to seek new concealment vectors. They scanned the neutral zone. Thousands of decomposing bodies littered the landscape. Through binoculars, an enemy observer saw a rotting horse carcass sinking into the cold crater mud. In reality, a sniper occupied an engineering structure equipped with a hidden telephone cable and a firing port. Aviation squadrons photographed the front lines daily. Intelligence officers checked every crater. Any new object triggered an immediate artillery strike. The French Military Engineering Corps bypassed this surveillance. They weaponized a static target, a dead horse. French engineers spent weeks of meticulous labor on a single replica. Technicians molded wood and heavy paper into an exact spatial duplicate. Sappers began the installation strictly at night. They crawled into no man's land. They grabbed the actual rotting animal. The dense smell of decomposition hit their faces. They dragged the dead weight backward through the dirt. They placed the papier-mâché shell on the exact same coordinates. The crew spooled a hidden telephone line straight back to the front-line trench. A sniper crawled inside the hollow cavity before dawn. He established a communication link. The sun rose. The landscape matched the previous day perfectly. The sniper watched the enemy lines. 24 hours passed without a shot. Engineers quickly adapted the night swap mechanics for animal carcasses to surviving landscape elements. What do you do when the only cover for hundreds of meters is a charred trunk? Engineers turned it into a steel capsule. Scouts mapped a specific stump. Workshops built an exact replica. Wood exterior, armored interior. The replacement required total darkness. Absolute silence accompanied the installation of the fake tree's heavy steel core, demanding precise coordination from the engineering teams. By dawn, the geometry of the battlefield remained unchanged. But the dead wood now housed a sniper. Artillery fire density had already reached critical levels. No more than 3 to 5 dead trunks remained per square kilometer. This statistical anomaly triggered mass paranoia. Trench society began to classify surviving nature exclusively as a disguised mechanical threat. Infantry stopped trusting the landscape. Soldiers systematically shredded real trees with concentrated machine gun fire. Fear overrode ammunition conservation. Gunners designated every standing branch a hostile target. Commanders issued a strict directive. Artillery batteries preemptively eradicated all remaining forest plantations. The eradication of forest was only the first phase. Engineers soon moved from mimicking nature to mass-producing mechanical avatars for ballistic data harvesting. Fake human heads. Modeled with anatomical accuracy, they were built to perform trench rituals and absorb fatal strikes. The deployment sequence required strict choreography. An infantryman slowly elevated the decoy just above the sandbags. It mimicked a careless sentry peeking over the wire. Below the firing line, another soldier blew into a long rubber tube. Gray cigarette smoke drifted from the lips of the lifeless papier-mâché face. The social illusion was flawless. Then came the ballistic strike. An enemy bullet punched cleanly through the hollow skull. The avatar had served its purpose. Psychological baiting instantly transitioned into hard mathematics. Trench surveyors retrieved the shattered decoy. They inserted a rigid probe through the entry and exit wounds. Officers consulted trigonometric tables. They measured the bullet drop angle and calculated the exact trajectory back to the shooter's nest. Nobody sent an infantry scout. Nobody risked a counter-sniper duel. Runners delivered the raw data directly to the rear. Battery commanders leveled the precise grid square with a massive simultaneous barrage. The total number of heavy guns targeting that single coordinate was 36. Shattering papier-mâché heads remained a basic ballistic exercise. The true operational shift occurred when shooters weaponized human anatomy. Why did a wounded soldier become more dangerous to the war machine than a dead one? Because a bleeding survivor instantly drained vital human and medical resources. A calculated trigger pull. The bullet shatters a femur. The target collapses. The echo of his screams fills no man's land. He functions as an acoustic bait. Comrades break cover to drag him back to the trench line. The sniper adjusts the optical sight. He eliminates the rescuers one by one. The combat math was brutal. A corpse required one grave. A screaming casualty systematically disabled a minimum of 4 active personnel. 2 stretcher bearers abandoned the firing line. 1 field surgeon initiated immediate triage. 1 nurse managed the surgical ward. Hospital beds vanished. Morphine stockpiles depleted. A single copper-jacketed round paralyzed the entire sector logistics chain. This economic calculation of agony generated absolute hatred among the troops. Frontline infantry stripped captured marksmen of all prisoner rights. Trench-clearing squads executed enemy snipers on the spot. A quick bullet served as a rare mercy compared to the prolonged underground mutilation reserved for scoped riflemen. No field tribunals, no surviving records. Yet this hyper-lethal environment produced a bizarre social paradox. The The trench network maintained localized zones of absolute neutrality. Veterans enforced strict visual codes across the barbed wire. Riflemen never pulled the trigger on supply runners carrying water buckets. Spotters completely ignored infantrymen walking toward the exposed latrine trenches. The armistice eventually halted the frontal assaults, but the strategic data proved undeniable. The end of the conflict permanently cemented specialized sniper detachments into the official organizational structure of regular armies. 80 years later, a modern combat veteran would leave a suicide note. The psychological weight of the optical crosshairs broke his mind. But governments engineered the assembly line blueprint for this exact breakdown back in the 1920s. The interwar period standardized the mechanics of a kill. State militaries opened specialized sniper academies across the globe. Instructors drilled ballistics, optical calibration, and extreme camouflage into new recruits. Solitary marksmanship shifted from a random battlefield anomaly into a heavily funded state industry. The military apparatus began mass-producing executioners. Data justified the budget. At Gallipoli, one shooter named Billy Singh logged 150 confirmed eliminations. Unofficial combat logs put his actual body count at 300. The sniper was now a permanent strategic asset. The Winter War proved the devastating efficiency of this new doctrine. The Soviet offensive crashed into a highly specialized Finnish defense. One marksman named Simo Heiha systematically dismantled the advancing command structure. He used iron sights. He targeted authority. The standard military hierarchy instantly collapsed under his fire. A simple salute became a terminal error. Tactical survival required immediate adaptation. Soviet officers ripped the rank markers off their coats. Frontline commanders tore the identifying insignia directly from their winter uniforms. The Winter War provided a brutal tactical baseline. By 1941, the Soviet military command prepared a systemic shock for the Wehrmacht. German generals expected to encounter women strictly within medical units. They expected field nurses. Instead, they faced elite killers operating sniper rifles. Why did this trigger such an irrational psychological breakdown within the German command? An armed female shattered their fundamental worldview. The Wehrmacht operated as a strictly male combat structure. Women calculating windage and trajectory destroyed their patriarchal military ideology. The deployment scale was massive. The Red Army integrated 2,000 female snipers into frontline operations. The reaction from Berlin was immediate. Command directives ordered troops to deny quarter to female combatants. Surrender protocols evaporated. The gender of the shooter became a catalyst for absolute cruelty, transforming standard combat into a campaign of ideological extermination. The Soviet snipers calculated the odds. They engineered their own contingency plans. A female operative retrieved a standard fragmentation grenade from her webbing. She manually unbent the metal prongs of the safety pin. She secured the explosive deep under her winter camouflage suit. The metallic click of the pin served as a final tactical guarantee. The operatives reserved one explosive device strictly for themselves. German capture guaranteed a fate far worse than standard execution. Male marksmen delivered staggering casualty rates. Ivan Sidorenko neutralized over 500 enemy targets. Yet the female operatives caused maximum psychological damage. Ludmila Pavlichenko hunted counter-snipers across the Eastern Front. She stalked enemy officers through ruined urban infrastructure. Her operational record locked in at a very specific metric: 309 confirmed kills. For the 2,000 deployed Soviet women, German field directives established a rigid baseline. Captivity guaranteed a procedure far worse than execution. 1944. A parachute drop behind enemy lines. Tatiana Baramzina. 36 confirmed kills on her operational ledger. Enemy infantry encircled her unit. She maintained continuous suppressive fire. The rifle bolt cycled. The internal magazine ran dry. Empty chamber. The dense smell of burnt gunpowder saturated the enclosed space. German assault troops breached the perimeter. They secured her capture. The ensuing interrogation process involved systematic physical destruction. The Wehrmacht stripped female snipers of all combatant status. They became targets for extreme reprisal. Maria Polivanova and Natalia Kovshova recognized this tactical reality. By 1942, their joint combat record exceeded 300 eliminations. German forces outflanked their position during a frontline engagement. The perimeter collapsed. The two marksmen calculated the remaining variables. Surrender equaled prolonged torture. They pulled the pins on their last fragmentation grenades. The blast radius guaranteed they remained out of German hands. This zero-surrender doctrine defined the sniper corps. Survival odds for a female marksman dropped below the baseline metrics of Soviet penal battalions. They detonated their own explosives. They fought until the final cartridge. Only 500 survived out of 2,000, a 75% mortality rate. Most of these losses did not result from counter-sniper fire. German field units tortured and executed captured female shooters in direct violation of the Geneva Conventions. The collapse of combat regulations extended far beyond the Eastern Front and Stalingrad. In the Pacific and Sicily theaters, sniper deployments systematically fractured the psychological stability of regular infantry. How did regular units react to the invisible threat? They answered with mass extrajudicial executions. Japanese shooters engineered a specific tactical protocol. They bypassed advancing riflemen. They locked their optics strictly onto medical personnel. A red cross on a steel helmet served as a primary target indicator. This tactical calculus neutralized all prior rules of engagement. The psychological toll dictated a new combat reality. Allied soldiers operated under constant optical surveillance. The operational stress threshold collapsed. This unremitting pressure forced regular troops to completely erase the boundary between military justice and rapid field lynching. High casualty rates among medics and wounded men triggered immediate unit retaliation. Command structures lost control over frontline discipline. Standard capturing procedures vanished. During the invasion of Sicily, American forces intercepted a large group of enemy combatants. Officers canceled interrogation protocols. Nobody verified the identities. American soldiers lined up and shot 73 Italian and German prisoners of war accused of sniper operations. By the escalation of the Vietnam War, the hatred toward enemy shooters mutated into systematic psychological operations. A Viet Cong operative designated as Apache pioneered this shift. She operated as a precision sniper. She functioned as a frontline interrogator. Her objective was the psychological collapse of the unit. She positioned captured American soldiers just outside the defense perimeter at Hill 55. She calculated the physical distance to the meter. The location remained close enough for the acoustic echo of screams to penetrate the Marine trenches, yet entirely beyond the range of a rapid response force. The Marines listened. They heard the systematic torture. They could not intervene. The tactical boundary between a marksman and a sadistic executioner dissolved. A single hostile element paralyzed the operational readiness of an entire battalion using only acoustics and terror. The command required an immediate countermeasure. Marine sniper Carlos Hathcock took the mission. He mapped her patrol route. He secured the visual. Hathcock pulled the trigger. Hathcock operated with basic glass and steady nerves. Today, the mathematics of a kill belong to silicon. Artificial intelligence algorithms instantly calculate wind resistance, barometric pressure, and the exact flight path of a bullet. The physical distance between the rifle and the target expands massively. The sterile green glow of modern night vision devices strips away all cover of darkness. The modern shooter operates in total isolation. The war in Ukraine showed how this high-tech reality collides with the mud of the trenches. Irina Startikova, call sign Bagheera, a sniper credited with over 40 eliminations. Field reports indicated some of those targets were not military personnel at all. During a heavy engagement, she took a severe hit. Her own unit retreated. They abandoned her bleeding in the dirt. Advancing Ukrainian infantry breached the sector and discovered her position. By the unwritten rules of the past century, A captured sniper with 40 kills receives a summary execution on the spot. No questions, no paperwork. But the trigger was never pulled. Enemy soldiers secured her rifle. Medics stepped in. They applied bandages and stabilized her condition right in the combat zone. This outcome highlights a complex legal reality. AI integration pushes the sniper miles away from the target physically, but legally, the operator remains under the exact same framework. The Geneva Conventions protect them just like any standard infantryman. Executing a surrendered shooter is a war crime, even if the battlefield historically dictated otherwise. The ultimate fate of the captured Bagheera now depends strictly on the results of an official legal investigation. A veteran executed himself decades after his final deployment. Bagheera survived physical capture, but the optical sight enforces an entirely different sentence on the shooter's own psyche. Why do snipers break down more often than regular infantrymen? They spend days studying the faces of the men command orders them to kill. Artillery crews bombard grid squares blindly. Infantrymen suppress target zones without visual verification. The sniper operates differently. High-density scope glass provides extreme magnification. A 25-power lens compresses a physical distance of 1,000 meters down to a few optical paces. The shooter tracks the target's daily route. He logs shift changes and sleep cycles. For tactical orientation during multi-day surveillance, sniper teams assign personal names to the compound guards. The operator memorizes the man's routine. Only then does he pull the trigger. The extreme magnification forces the shooter to observe the rapid contraction of facial muscles right before the bullet strikes. The sniper extracts 100% visual confirmation of the target's catastrophic biological destruction. This direct optical feedback guarantees severe post-traumatic stress disorder. The human brain logs the kill as an intimate event. The psychological infrastructure crumbles. One recent veteran documented this exact collapse. He eliminated a designated target during his tour. He did not fully comprehend the neurological damage at the time. The mental deterioration surfaced years later as crushing, inescapable guilt. He detailed the mental horrors of the profession in a written confession. YouTube algorithms and community guidelines strictly prohibit the broadcast of this specific document. The veteran could not erase the high-resolution memories from his cortex. After enduring years of psychological self-destruction, he left behind exactly one suicide note.